everyone, good evening and welcome to all the learners from Emeritus and Eruditus. We are here again for a guest lecture series by Career Services. I am Sugandha and I will be moderating this session. Now, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box and we'll bring them up at the end of the session. Our guest for today is Vice President for the Customer Success Platform at PayPal, Mr. Guru Bhat. He is the technology leader with over 25 years of experience. He's been instrumental in driving PayPal's technology strategy globally as the company builds out next generation payment solution and services. In his current role, Guru is the global product and engineering leader for PayPal's Customer Success Platform organization. He also leads PayPal's technology centers in Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad. Since joining PayPal in 2015 as the General Manager of PayPal's India centers, Guru has held several engineering and product leadership roles, including transaction orchestration and planning, merchant data products, dispute resolution experiences, amongst others. Guru holds a master's degree in computer science from the State of University of New York at Buffalo. So please join me in welcoming our guest, Mr. Guru. The topic for today is the glass is always full, leadership principles for evolving leaders. Mr. Guru, welcome and the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you, and I thanks to Eruditus for having me here as a guest speaker. And it's great to see so many participants joining. I hope the session has some value for each and every one of you. So first of all, I hope everybody is safe and healthy and you all enjoyed a wonderful festive season in India that we just got out of. For those of you who are joining us from outside India, I hope all of you are safe and healthy as well. So here's how this is going to go. I know that we've got an hour in front of us, but I want to make it such that there is some interaction at the end of it. So I will finish and happy to take any questions that are there. I will first give you a little bit of context into my own leadership journey in terms of where I work and what we do and what my company does, for those of you who are not very familiar with PayPal. But after that, I will talk about a few leadership principles that I was not always born with, but have come to me as during the course of my life, because I've realized that they really are timeless and they help people become good leaders when you adopt them. So I hope that my lessons will be of some value to you. Your journey may be different, your mileage may vary, but nonetheless, I hope it's useful. So with that, let me get to the first part of it, which is, where do I work? I work for PayPal. It's a global digital payments company. Essentially, we are involved in democratizing access to financial services. We want to reimagine money so that we can create the world's most open, independent digital payments platform. And through this, enable billions of people around the world to join the financial services system and make progress in their lives. Our goal in the very near future is to serve 1 billion customers every day. And we want to enable PayPal to be a central player in the future of digital payments through this access. So we are much more than a button. So most people, when they think about PayPal, they think about the pay with PayPal, check out with PayPal button on a website. We in fact have a plethora of different products across the spectrum of payments, including mobile, in-store. We do contextual commerce, we do cross-border trade, loyalty, rewards, online, offline, all different channels. We are truly an omni-channel player, and we are just getting started. So we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to grow our capabilities. We're continuing to grow our global footprint, and we are definitely very mission-driven, purpose-driven in our approach. Our network is actually two-sided. We serve both sellers on our system as well as the buyers, merchants as they are called, sellers, and buyers, we call them consumers. So we have a two-sided network. We've got several other brands under our umbrella that many people may be familiar with but don't know are actually a part of the PayPal family. For example, Venmo, Zoom, which is a money transfer service. Venmo is a social payments app in the US. Zettle, Honey, Swift, Braintree, a variety of different brands that we have acquired during our existence. And through all of this, as well as the core PayPal brand, we power millions of customers. So we currently have nearly 420 million customers worldwide, of whom 33 million are sellers and 383 are buyers. And we have a total payment volume of over $1 trillion in the trailing 12 months that we've been through. So we have a lot of different capabilities, and the global scale that we operate at touches millions of lives on a daily basis. Essentially, money is a very fundamental part of the human existence and experience. And as part of that, we have the ability to serve all these different people around the world, and we want to serve practically everybody on the planet with the products that we build. And working in a company like that, I've been here for 6 years now. To give you a sense of my own career, I went to grad school in the US and then worked there for about 13 years and moved back to India way back at the end of 2007. So a full half of my career has been in the US and the second half has been in India. And I've totally enjoyed both legs of my career. I started my career at Sun Microsystems, which was an iconic company in Silicon Valley at that time. Back in the late 90s, it was definitely, Sun Microsystems used to call itself the dot in .com. And it was an incredibly exhilarating ride at that time when the .com boom was going on when I was at Sun. I worked for Oracle, moved back to India, worked for SAP. I did a small startup, a supply chain startup company. I worked for them for a couple of years. Worked for Ericsson for nearly 5 years, and then for the last 6 years, I've been with PayPal. And it's been a wonderful journey for me. So when I look at the session in front of us, the goals I have are simple. I have been truly blessed to have a career where I've enjoyed the sponsorship, advocacy, and mentorship and coaching of amazing bosses. I can't think of a single boss of mine who hasn't been somebody I've learned from. I've had the benefit of working for some great companies. I've had the benefit of enjoying the friendship and trust and affection of many of my colleagues. And through that, I've learned a lot. And I've had a lot of failure, right? I'm pretty sure if I just count them up, the number of failures I've had are way more than the number of successes I've had. So as a result of that, I've acquired, as you can see, a little bit of gray hair on, and I've acquired a little bit of wisdom, at least from my context. So, and I'm hoping that this can help all of you in some way lead your own leadership journeys in a good direction and learn about what is essential for a leader to develop as we move forward into a new age, which is completely digital, as we are seeing in the last 2 years. So with that, I'll tease you with a few images, and through that, hopefully all of you can also tell me if this resonates with you or not. Please feel free to use the chat option and chime in. I will just keep an eye on it, but I may not be able to react to every one of them. But during the talk, I'll be asking a few questions. I'd love to see you chiming in if you have an answer. So here's a picture, very cheerful little girl with a donut in her hand. What do you think this, if you were to describe this in one word, what is the emotion that you're feeling when you see this? What do you think this picture is trying to signify? So there's a lot of people giving, sharing, happiness, happy to offer. Like people are, going and giving me a lot of different options. I love it. Keep it going. I'm going to reveal what I mean. Altruism. I'm not sure how many of you have heard the word. Altruism is essentially a very deep human instinct where you derive happiness from doing something for others. I think traditionally, all of us have been taught that there is great happiness in getting. But in reality, I think there is greater happiness in giving. When you are selflessly able to give to somebody else, I think the kind of value you derive from that experience cannot be quantified. It cannot even be put into words. And that spirit of humanity, to be able to derive that kind of value by just giving to somebody else, doing something else for somebody selflessly, that is altruism. So for me, in my career, I think it's been, I've had a traditional Indian upbringing, right? I'd say a traditional South Indian upbringing. I'm from Bangalore, born and raised. And I think we're all taught when we are in school to be highly competitive, that getting good marks is everything, that you have to, really, really struggle hard and be on top of the heap to succeed and all of that, right? So I was exactly like that. As a kid, I would be fiercely competitive. I wanted to be at the top of the class. I wanted to get the highest marks. I would rarely share any of my information or my tips and tricks. And all of you who are listening, if you've grown up in India, know what it's like. If your friend asks you, hey, did you study? You're like, no, man, I never studied. I didn't study at all. I haven't done anything. I think I'm going to fail the exam tomorrow. But in reality, you're like sitting and really studying hard. You've done 2 revisions, 3 revisions, but you don't admit it, because if you admit it, then that guy might also study and there will be competition. So instead you play it down, hoping that he doesn't play the same game with you and that he has really not studied, right? All of us have been through these maybe not all of us, maybe like crazy guys like me. But over a period of time, I think I grew out of it. And at some point in my own life, I started to see the value of altruism. I think this was something that came to me from seeing how my parents were. Both my parents, to give you a little bit of context, are doctors. They're in their late 70s. They have been doing charitable work for the last 31 years. They've been doing social service for 31 years. So a few years ago, when my parents were being given an award for this outstanding social service, the organizers asked my dad to come up on stage and talk about why they did what they did and how they were able to do what they do. So my dad went up on stage, and I think this has had a tremendous impact on my own career, actually. This was back in August 2014. I even remember when this happened. And my dad said, look, I'm not a great person. I don't want people to think that I'm doing something special. Anybody whose life has been kind to them, who have the intent, can do what I'm doing. So I don't want people to think it's out of reach for them to do the work that I'm doing. But he said there is one quality in him that he has not seen in too many other people, which is that right from when he was a child, he does not remember a day when he wanted more than he had. He had the boon of contentment, as he put it, from God very early in his life. As a result, he has been able to give more than he has taken. He has been able to lead a life of giving rather than lead a life of acquisition. And the impact has been tremendous. The number of people who come to me and tell me that they've been helped by my parents is immense. And their career has been great. Not career, by career, I don't mean titles, I don't mean money. Those are all actually superficial attributes of success. True success is through impact. True success is through a legacy. And on that, I think my parents have done extremely well. And I tie it back to the kind of spirit of altruism that they had. And when I internalized this and took it to heart and said, you know what, to the small extent, I'm not going to save anybody's life. I work in the technology industry. Very rarely do we get a chance to save people's lives, honestly. But what I can do is try and pay it forward to the best extent possible. I can just try to give more than I get. If somebody has helped me, can I help others? And trust me, from the day I started to adopt this particular value, my career has definitely taken an up curve beyond what I would have ever expected. And I'd say that if you're an emerging leader, the ability to pay it forward is truly something that is going to transform your leadership journey. So make it a mindful part of your leadership characteristic. Make sure that when you are leading others, completely internalize this aspect of being there to serve other people. Leadership is a privilege. It is a privilege to serve. It is not a privilege to boss over other people. It is not a privilege. It's not a privilege where you get perks and things like that. It's actually a privilege to serve other people so that they can be better than you. And that paying it forward, trust me, it comes back and pays in leaps and bounds in your career. So that's one, right? That's quality number one that I have internalized through my own journey. Now, back to the quizzes. So when you see this picture, what do you think of? Right? Again, just a word. Wow, people are just hitting it right on the head right away. There's like different angles, be curious, etc., etc. Well, whoever said curious, absolutely. I think curiosity is a superpower, honestly. It's an underrated superpower. The world around us is changing dramatically, rapidly, all the time. And the only way you're going to be relevant in the world around you is if you're curious about the world around you. And that curiosity has to be founded in a spirit of optimism and positivity. You have to be curious because you love life. You have to be curious because you can't believe that you're living in an age where there's so much happening and you want to know everything. And this curiosity pays dividends in multiple ways. One, if you're curious, you're going to have a learning mindset all the time. You are never going to think you know it all. You're always going to think there is something else that you don't know that you need to learn. And that, trust me, is the sign of a great leader. Somebody who doesn't think that they know all the answers. Somebody who always thinks there's a better way to do things. Somebody who always thinks there's something more interesting to derive. Somebody who never gets bored because their curiosity will always help them to find a little more juice in whatever situation they're in, right? So these are important. So curiosity is a superpower in many other ways. So there's, where we talk about the emotional intelligence, emotional quotient, IQ, intelligence quotient. I think there is a CQ as well, the curiosity quotient. And CQ is such an important part of being a good leader. Now, why is it important? Because just let me give you one example, right? We all work in global companies. Many of us do. I think most of the people who are joining here today must be working for global companies. And in a global company, you get to meet people from different cultures. What is a challenge when you meet people from different cultures? One, there is a knowledge gap in terms of not knowing where they come from, what their food is like, what their background and experiences are like, what their attitudes are like. This is very difficult. And what happens when you don't have that pre-built into your system? When I say pre-built into your system, think about growing up in India with neighbors from different parts of the country, etc. You recognize patterns. You know where people are coming from. We Indians are so good at even kind of typecasting people based on their last name. You immediately map out where they are from and what their family is likely to have been like, what they're likely to eat and not eat, what their clothing habits are going to be, and what they will like to hear and not like to hear. Maybe many times it's drastically wrong, but in some cases it could be right. But at least it gives you a baseline to start from. But when you work with global cultures, maybe you don't have this, right? And when you don't have that, what happens? Your ability to generate trust in people very quickly diminishes a little. And trust building is the number one characteristic of great leadership. Your ability to build trust with somebody else at record speed determines your ability to get things done at record speed. And if you want to do that, you need to be able to build trust super fast. And for that, you need to know a little something about those people. Now, if you're a curious kind, like I am, I'm extremely curious. I'm always interested in other cultures. I want to know what they eat. What kind of food do they eat? What kind of festivals do they celebrate? What kind of rituals do they have? And these are great conversation starters. If you meet somebody from a different culture and you're able to pull out a nugget and say, hey, you're from this country. I've read about this interesting ritual that you have. Can you imagine the effect that it has on that person? You'll be like, oh, wow, this person actually is interested enough about my culture to have actually read something about it and know something about it. And I don't need to tell you anything else, right? All of us have had this feeling. If somebody who is not from India tells us, hey, I love Diwali, it's such a beautiful function. Or I love the various rituals and gods that and the different religions that you have. All of us swell up with pride. All of us feel very good that somebody else knows about us. Why do you think that the same thing will not be true for somebody from a different country? It is exactly the same. Everybody likes to know that other people think of them as valuable people, valuable enough to know something about. And curiosity is absolutely your friend when it comes to figuring out how to get that, right? So be curious. It is a cultivatable power. If you think you're not curious, you just have to practice it. And trust me, soon you'll be surprised at how much you're learning, and that turns into a virtuous cycle where you're constantly hungry to learn more and more and more, right? All right. Okay. Now, this will be great if somebody is able to get this. What do you think this is signifying? Optimism. Wow, that's a good one. Be tough. All right. I have power. We can do it. Achieve, etc., etc. Well, people are going here and there, but I don't think anybody's gotten it yet, right? I don't think you can either, because this is going to be a little tough. So let me just give you that. Do you know a good F word? Well, folks, if you know a good F word, don't share it on the thing. I mean a good F word, not bad F word. So if you're sharing something on the chat, please delete it. Don't do that. I want a good F word, right? Now, what does this look like? This looks like a good F word right here. I think this is one aspect that has been a key enabler of my own learning journey and my own leadership journey. We unfortunately in various Asian cultures, I would say, disproportionately incentivize success and disproportionately punish failure. Right from when I was a kid, I remember this. I think the world is changing, but definitely as a young child, I had a pathological fear of failure, because I was always told, hey, please don't fail, right? Actually, nobody said, take a risk and succeed wildly. Everybody said, please don't take risks and please don't fail. So this is drilled into us from a very young age as a cultural imperative. For most of us in India, this was the case. And I'm talking about my generation. I'm sure most of you who have joined are much younger than I am. And it may have been different, but I doubt it, right? And unfortunately, failure contains some of the biggest and best lessons that life can give you. In fact, I feel the more you fail when you're younger, the harder you become and the better you become, and the more able you become to be able to generate tremendous success later in life. We unfortunately allow kids to lead lives where they are so protected that they don't fail at all in the beginning of their lives. And then we wonder, why are we not creating an Apple from here? Why don't we have a Google coming out of India? Why aren't Indian companies reaching those heights? Well, culturally, we've kind of hobbled everybody around to be so afraid of taking risks that nobody wants to do anything. Everybody wants to trot that very safe middle path where nothing can go wrong, but nothing can go dramatically right either, right? So when we treat failure as a pariah that has to be shunned at all costs, I think we are turning our back to what can be an incredible enabler for us. It's a superpower to be able to absorb failure. And by absorb failure, what I mean is not get down and out about it, not treat it as, oh, that's okay, I can fail again. No, I'm not saying you should fail all the time. No. If you fail the same way twice, then you're doing something wrong. If you fail, learn from it, try something better and fail again and learn from it and try something better and eventually succeed, you're doing it absolutely right. And we should be building culture which accepts this. As leaders, this would be one of the biggest things that we can do. So if you're a leader anywhere, if you are somebody, and all of you are leaders, right? Every single person on this call is a leader, because leadership is not about level, it's not about hierarchy. You can exhibit leadership qualities no matter where you are. And one leadership quality that you can exhibit is being more tolerant of failure, being able to put your hand on another person's shoulder when they fail and say, Don't worry about it. What did you learn? What are you going to do better? How are you going to change? And then using that as a positive force to do better and better and better. That's how you lead, right? So I would say failure and the absorption of failure, super important. Okay. Let's let's take a slightly different turn here. So do you know any three important words? Three important words. Anybody? So, and I would be super surprised and impressed if somebody will get what I'm thinking of. Somebody said, just do it. Not bad. Let's do it. Okay, that's good. Let me go further. So as you keep guessing. So, oops, sorry, I went back. Am I talking about OMG? No, I'm not, right? And well, it's a good three-letter word. It's a much used three-letter word, but that's not the three-letter word I'm thinking of. What does this look like? This guy looks pretty pissed. No, that's not what I'm thinking of either. What I'm thinking of is, I don't know. Being able to say, I don't know, is an important characteristic as a leader. I think a lot of good things start when you admit that you don't know. You then make yourself open to the aspect of knowing. Otherwise, you're always going to think you know it all, right? So being able to say, I don't know, three important words. And I'll give you an anecdote from one of my favorite book series. So not sure how many of you have read the Freakonomics series of books by Steven Tyler and Stephen Dubner. Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner. Steven Tyler is Aerosmith's lead singer. That's not who I'm thinking about. I'm sure he's written a book, but I don't know. But Steve Dubner and Stephen Levitt. Freakonomics was a book where they saw the hidden side of everything. These two authors went around looking at various phenomena and figuring out why it was so by looking at the data and discovering what was hidden behind that data. I'll give you an example. In New York City in the 90s, crime dramatically dropped. So a lot of people started to say, oh, that's because we introduced a lot more policing. But there was more policing as a percentage of policemen versus the population even earlier, and that hadn't changed anything. So it wasn't just policing. There were various other theories looked at, and nothing seemed very satisfying. And then Dubner and Levitt went back and they looked at what had happened in the preceding decades. Back in the early 70s, there was a landmark piece of legislation that was passed through the Supreme Court called Roe versus Wade in the US. Roe v. Wade was a landmark legislation. It was the legislation that supported a woman's right to choose, right? As a result of supporting a woman's right to choose, the theory that Dubner and Levitt had was there were fewer people born who were abandoned. There were more people who were born because their mothers and fathers really wanted them. And as a result, you had fewer kids turning teenagers and becoming outlaws by the time you got to the 90s. And as a result, the crime rate dropped. So the book is full of these kinds of hidden pieces of information where you look back and say, wow, that was unexpected, completely something I wasn't expecting, highly entertaining. Now, Freakonomics, they published a second one called Super Freakonomics. And then a lot of people started writing to them saying, how the hell do you guys think like this? What makes you so different that you're able to look at things in such a different way? How do you think outside the box? Now that is a cliche that you should all be very familiar with, right? Think outside the box. I'm sure all of you have heard that. And if you're like me, you've scratched your head thinking, what the hell do the people mean when they say think outside the box? What is this? So the last one called Think Like a Freak, that was their last book in that trilogy. Think Like a Freak is actually where they explain how they think the way they do. And again, this is through usage of a lot of different examples. So here's one that they talked about, right? So one story, very, very interesting story. This was in New York, the 4th of July, which is US Independence Day. There's a amusement park called Coney Island. So Coney Island is an amusement park where they have lots of rides and roller coasters and Ferris wheel and all of that. So it's a carnival-like atmosphere, beautiful summer, hot, everybody enjoying themselves. Of course, I'm talking about pre-COVID days. I don't know how Coney Island is during COVID, but this was back in the mid-90s. And what happens as part of Coney Island, one tradition is there is a hot dog eating contest. So the hot dog eating contest is essentially as simple as it sounds. It is to reward the person who can eat the most number of hot dogs. So usually what happens is people line up when the hot dog eating contest starts. They keep a pile of hot dogs in front of these contestants, and people get 12 minutes to just eat as many hot dogs as they can. For those of you who haven't met a hot dog till now in your life, according to me, you're not missing much. A hot dog is essentially a dry piece of bread split in half in this, like a sub, like you've all eaten a sub. It's in the same shape with a thick, dense piece of meat in between. And if you're lucky, you get some mayo and some dressings and ketchup and things like that. So imagine having to eat this dry piece of bread with an extremely dense piece of meat for 12 minutes and eating as many as you can. So the typical winner of this was a big, burly, beefy American man who could just, with a big stomach and a big mouth, who could eat as many as they could, right? So until 1995, the record that was held was 25 hot dogs in 12 minutes. So you're eating at the rate of 2 hot dogs a minute, which is pretty damn good, right? So 1995, all the contestants line up, and in that lineup, there is a small, thin Japanese gentleman called Takeru Kobayashi. So he's standing there, also standing and waiting to be a part of the competition. And everybody starts laughing, right? The guy next to him turns to him and says, what are you doing here? Your stomach is not even as big as my bicep, right? You're just kind of wasting your time. You paid your entry fee to get into this. What are you doing? Well, I'm sure I've given the story away a little bit here by introducing this gentleman. He won. That year, in 1995, he ate 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes. 50 hot dogs, when the previous record was 25. So he doubled the record in one sitting. So years later, when Dubner and Levitt were writing the book, they caught up with this gentleman and said, you must have thought outside the box. There is no way you could have doubled the record by just thinking along the same rate. What did you do different? So he had a very simple answer, right? So he said, see, everybody till then had been asking the question, how can I eat more hot dogs? Right? How can I eat more hot dogs? That's what they were asking. How can I eat more and more and more in 1 minute? Kobayashi asked a different question. He asked the question, how can I make one hot dog easier to eat? So what he did, and this was the magic, right? This was the secret, how he did this. The minute the whistle went off and the competition started, he took the bread and the meat apart. He started to chew on the meat and at the same time started to dip the bread in the bottle of water that was kept next to him. There was a glass of water for the contestants to keep drinking. He started to dip the bread in that. He finishes the meat. By then, the bread has become completely wet and soggy. He just swallows it. And in the process, he makes it much faster for himself. It's not as dry. And he's getting the water that he needs also through that process. I can't tell you that it's going to be super tasty. I don't know how many of you have had bread and water. Definitely not tasty, but it got the job done. He managed to get 50 in 12 minutes. Next year, he came back and he got 75. In case you're wondering how he did that, he realized that it takes time for the hot dogs and the bread and the water to settle in the stomach. So as he's eating, he started to do skipping. He started to jump up and down, right? And as he's eating, he's also jumping up and down so that it's settling in faster. So he was able to get 25 more as a result of that. So why did I give you this big story? Because when people say, think outside the box, the next level detail in that is first admitting that you don't know. And second, it is to think about the problem from a different angle. It is to ask a different question than has been traditionally asked. In this trivial, maybe example, the question that was always asked was, how can I eat more hot dogs? The question that he asked was, how can I make one hot dog easier to eat? There are a lot more stories in that. I highly recommend the book. Very, very interesting. So if you're interested, you should look at it. The book is called Think Like a Freak. And that was why I feel starting with I don't know is always a very good place when you're trying to do something big. Now, what are some other key ingredients that I have learned during this process? Now, let's see, right? We go back, it's quiz time again. I don't know what TOFTB means. Observing, okay? Observe the little smirk on that cat's face, like the lips are turned up. Suspicious, okay, not bad. Focused, excellent, a lot of good answers. Furious, I don't know. Accepting the result, I don't think this cat is accepting the result. I don't think cats accept any results. They define the results. Attitude, I think, what I'm going for is attitude, right? There is great value in cultivating the right attitude. And I will share a few different things where attitude makes all the difference, right? First one, again, this is a different species here, but again, it is demonstrating a certain attitude, an attitude of gratitude. I think all of us, I think we are we find it very easy to complain about things. I have been the same way. I know I am still the same way when it comes to many things, but I've gotten better. And that's because I've lived a life where I know for a fact that I have many things to be grateful for. And I have very few things to complain about. Quite honestly, there is so much value in gratitude because life is all about perspective. You can wake up with the same things as another person. The other person might be happy and you may be sad. And it might just be a matter of perspective. So cultivating an attitude of gratitude, I think, is extremely important for you to succeed in life. I'm not just talking about your career. And to be very clear, leadership is never about just your career. Leadership is about how you lead your life. And in that life, being grateful for what you have, always knowing that things could be so much worse, and they are for a lot of people, which you have had going really well for you, is such an important enabler for you to stay grounded. And in leadership, it's so important for you to be humble, grounded, connected to what goes on at the ground level. And for that, you need tremendous amounts of gratitude that you express freely. So when people do nice things for you, you should always express that gratitude. And there's a movie called Wonder. I don't know how many of you have seen this movie. The movie is essentially about a boy who's got a certain illness and the way he deals with his life. It's a beautiful movie. It's a very touching movie. It's not a light movie. It does tug at your heartstrings. Wonder. So in that, there's a beautiful line, right? And it's always stayed with me ever since I watched that movie. And the line is this. It says, when you're faced with an opportunity to be right or to be kind, always choose kind. So being kind is such an important part, and kindness, I think, to a large extent, the underlying foundation of kindness is always gratitude. You're grateful for what you have, and hence you find it easy to be kind to other people. It's very, very difficult to be kind to other people if you're starting from an attitude of victimhood, where you feel like you've been cheated, where you feel jealous, where you feel envious, where you feel like you've been screwed in life, right? It's very hard to be kind to other people. But if you're grateful, you're happy to be where you are, you're happy for the gifts that you have in life, good health, just all of those things that we take for granted, and we look at somebody else and say, my God, I could have been in so much of a worse place than I am right now. You end up feeling grateful and you find it easier to be kind to others. So an attitude of gratitude, I think, is super critical. The second one is an attitude of pride and passion. I actually, on LinkedIn, I posted an article a couple of days ago. I posted just my thoughts. It was around the topic of pride and passion. And these are thrown about heavily in the world today, right? People are constantly talking about you need to have passion, you need to follow your passion, you need to live your life loving what you do and do what you love and nothing else and all of that, right? I think all of these miss the point because you start looking at life in very black and white terms. Passion is something you cannot artificially generate. Passion is something you may be born with, and it is, in very many cases, it is something that you develop over a course of your life. Falling in love at first sight, I think there's great drama in that. There is a certain appeal because all of us love the dramatic. But love at first sight most often is fictitious. It takes time to develop love for something. So going blindly after passion and saying that, oh my God, I've been doing something for 1 week and I'm not finding passion in it, then you're not doing it right because you need to give it enough time. I'm not saying you should endlessly keep plodding at something even if you hate it, but don't rush to conclusions that, oh my God, I may not have passion for this because I've been doing it for 5 minutes and I'm not feeling it in here. No, nothing happens that quickly. So you need to give things enough time to develop from an interest to a passion. Otherwise, that interest may just die out and that's it. You don't do anything with it. What is, however, in your control is pride. Pride for what we do. Pride in what we do. Taking pride in our job. That is completely in our control. There is nothing stopping you from being proud of what you do, even if you don't have passion for it. And I'll give you a story of where this lesson hit home very, very deeply for me. So here I am, I'm working at a company, and this was maybe about 8-9 years ago. And at that time I was leading a mid-sized team, lots of meetings during one day, and around 4 o'clock in the evening, just tired of sitting inside a conference room the whole day, I decided to go and wash my face, right? So I went into the restroom, and as I'm entering the restroom, I noticed the janitor. He's very carefully taking off his apron, folding it and keeping it inside a cupboard because presumably his shift is over. And I still remember the gentleman's name. His name was Munikrishna. And I saw him doing that. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I went to the sink and started splashing water on my face. And like many of you in the audience, I happen to have a Y chromosome as a male. And that Y chromosome makes me somewhat inclined to making a mess when I wash my face. So around the sink, lots of water, I'm splashing. And I look in the mirror and I see this guy, Munikrishna, wearing his apron again. And after I'm done, he comes in there. I felt very ashamed of myself for making such a big mess there, and very, very diligently wipes the surface clean. So this struck me, right? I thought, what is going on here? This guy was about to leave the room. So I asked him, I said, what happened? You were about to leave, your shift was over. Why did you come back? And he told me, he said, sir, when I put my signature at the end of the day on this restroom, there's a piece of paper there on the door. I don't want anybody to point a finger and say this was not a clean bathroom. And I was totally stunned because can I say that this person has an interesting job? Very hard for me in my position to say his job is interesting. Can I say he has passion for the job? Maybe he does, but I seriously doubt it. It is very hard to generate passion for doing the same thing over and over again every day when it's cleaning restrooms. Can I say that he is phenomenally well paid and that's why he's doing his job well? Not really. He's probably the lowest paid person in that building. But can I say he has pride in his job? Absolutely yes. He has so much pride that he says, when I put my signature on something, nobody should be able to point a finger at me. Can we all look at ourselves and believe and say with honesty that we feel that way? Has there not been a time when you have looked at your Excel spreadsheet that you're filling out saying, man, this is so boring, that's why I make mistakes here? Hasn't there been a time when you're preparing a PowerPoint slide deck for your boss saying, oh my God, just moving all these boxes, sizing them correctly, this is so boring. That's why I'm not able to do it perfectly. But somebody who has pride is immune to those feelings. For them, what drives them is that when they do something, it is the best that they can do it, right? I think all of us can take a lesson from Muni Krishna. We have to internally look at what we do and say, are we demonstrating that kind of pride? If we are not, then we are not doing justice to the paycheck that we earn. We are not doing justice to the potential that lies within us. So pride is in your control. Passion may not be, but that is no excuse to do a bad job. That is no excuse to give up too soon. That was one more thing that I wanted to say. I've come to the last slide of my deck. And it's an important slide because I've learned during my journey in my career and in my life that this is super important. Because at the end of the day, this matters a lot. Joy, having fun, happiness and joy, absolutely right. I think we owe it to ourselves to lead a life where we are happy. If despite your attempts, if despite your best effort to be proud of the job that you do, you don't derive happiness from what you're doing, if you don't derive a sense of self where you can lead your authentic life, then I think you should do everything in your power to do something different. Because you only have one life to lead. And if that's not a happy life, then what good is it, right? You have to be trying all the time to build the characteristics in you that would make you happy no matter what obstacles come in your way. They are things like patience, resilience, gratitude, positivity, optimism, and above all else, a sense of humor. Because not everything in your life is going to go according to your plan. Not everything in your life is going to meet your expectation. A sense of humor is important to be able to deal with it and still remain happy when things don't go in your direction. So happiness, again, is a choice that we make. A choice that we make by building the right qualities in us. And if we have to be able to lead lives of impact and purpose where we fulfill the mission that we are here on earth for, I think it's important for us to pursue happiness with the same kind of discipline that we pursue other things. And happiness takes effort. And happiness takes building of great qualities that allow you to be happy, no matter what the circumstance. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure. Happy to take any questions. I'll leave it to Sugandha to be the MC from here on.
Thank you so much, Guru. I think it was really interesting. And we have questions started, Warren. Let's take them one by one.
Sure.
All right. Okay. So Ruchi is asking, what do you like most, being an engineer or a manager?
Ruchi, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say both, right? There was a time when I thought being a manager was the most uncool thing in the world. So when I was an individual contributor, as a young guy right out of grad school, all I wanted to do was code, and more code, right? I could sit endlessly in front of my laptop just doing that. But when I was very, very early in my career, when I was barely like 26 years old, I got an opportunity to be a manager. Because somebody up the management chain came in and said, hey, Guru really communicates well. He seems to get along really well with people. He's a very pleasant person. He'd make a great manager. They may have been right or wrong. I don't know, because I turned it down. I said, be a manager. Who the hell wants to do that? It's so uncool. You don't get to code enough, if at all. And you have to worry and sit and listen to people complaining to you, and you have to do performance management, and you have to fill out all these reports and spreadsheets and whatnot. Forget it. I just want to keep coding. Well, accidentally, sometime later in life had different plans for me. I fell into management, not mindfully, but accidentally, when my boss suddenly quit the company, and my company said, hey, can you please take this on for some time till we hire somebody else? And once I took that on, they said, hey, you're actually pretty good at it. Do you mind doing the job yourself? And that's how I got into management. So I find during one phase of my life when I was an engineer, I derived great satisfaction from it. And I had great passion for it. Now that I'm a manager, over a period of time, I've developed great love for it and passion for it as well. So I like both of them.
Great, thanks. Vishal is asking, many times you get a feeling you're not treated well or not get what you deserve despite of full efforts. How to deal with that?
I think, was that Prashant? Like, who did you say?
Vishal.
Oh, that was Vishal. Sorry. So, Vishal, I think this is again one part of life where you cannot control everything. There is always going to be there. You cannot control who you work with. You cannot control how they are, and in different parts of their life, depending on what's going on in their own personal life, they may not behave the right way towards you as well. What we can control is how we react to it. So you said a very important word there, right? I don't get what I deserve. One, I think we need to have a little bit of patience in waiting for to get what we deserve. That is one, right? And I don't mean endless patience, but a little bit of patience. I think frequently we are incentivized through culture and technology for instant gratification. I want my promotion right now. Why? Because my neighbor, this guy, he and I went to college together. He and I started together, but he got promoted earlier than me. So I need to get it right now, right? So I'm not getting what I deserve. Now, there may be different shades of gray there. There may be truth in it. There may not be truth in it as well. Maybe you're not getting it because that person has done something better than you. Or maybe you're not getting it because your manager is being unfair. Neither of which is good for you to obsess over. But what you can think about is constantly leading your life in a way where whether somebody gives it to you or not, you focus on your own development rather than your own achievement. I think very many times we are enamored and in love with achievement. We don't pay so much attention to development. Because when you develop, when you keep focusing on learning and growing internally, where you're self-aware and you know that you're becoming more valuable, trust me, at the right time, that development will pay off much more than anything else in your life. So if you focus on achievement all the time, and sometimes those are those artificial things that tell you that you've achieved, right? You've gotten a new title, you've gotten a promotion, you've gotten a bigger paycheck. Sometimes you might get lucky and get those ahead of time. Maybe you get it before you deserve it. And you start thinking that you've already developed where you actually have only achieved, you haven't developed yet. So I'd say, I'm not saying you should endlessly tolerate unfairness. When you are constantly being unfair and when you feel there's unfair treatment towards you, you should stand up at some point. But I would say before you stand up, take the time to understand why it is happening. Be very objective. See if you've developed enough to deserve what you say you deserve. And if that's the case, then definitely stand up for yourself. But at all times, always keep focusing on your development.
Great. So Raj is asking how to handle toxic colleagues.
Oh, Raj, luckily for me, I don't think I've seen that many people who have been toxic. I hope the culture in your company takes care of some of that toxicity. So I will maybe approach it from a different angle, right? Toxic or not, we might have different levels of toxicity. Some people may be difficult. Some people might just be jerks, right? I don't have an answer for the jerks. I think the company's responsibility is to kick them out. There is no place for any jerks anywhere in the workplace. But there may be difficult people, not because they are bad people, but because they have a different opinion than you, right? And I'll talk about that. So what happens when you meet a toxic person or a difficult person? There is conflict. And your job is to resolve that conflict as effectively as possible without letting ego or emotion into the equation. So when you look at conflict resolution, I will give you a framework that I have internalized thanks to my experience. I call it the 4 C's, right? When you're in conflict with another person, it's usually a mismatch in ideas. Or if it's not a mismatch in ideas, if it's a mismatch in styles, you have to bring it to a level where it's only the idea that you're talking about. You're discounting every other factor. Now, if it's an idea saying, my idea is better, people are fighting with each other, what is the way to look at it? 1, context, C. That's the first C. Context. Let's make sure we are talking about the same thing. It shouldn't be that I am looking out of the window at Tokyo and you're looking at London and both of us are fighting about what the skyline looks like. Making sure that the context is the same. That's the first C. The next 3 C's, I'll give them to you all at once, right? Always when you're evaluating an idea, evaluate whether it is good for your company, good for your customers, good for your colleagues, right? The 3 C's. So if you're able to get these 4 C's together and always objectively set the right context, make sure both of you are talking about the same thing, and then look at whether the idea is good for customer, colleague, company. It could be one of those C's, it could be all 3 of those C's, it could be 2 of them. In different situations, it might be different. Then you can come to an objective understanding of whose idea is truly the right one. Now, in spite of that, if somebody doesn't agree and they still want to fight, that I would say is a matter for escalation, because you've tried your best at least to resolve the conflict in a nice way.
Great, thanks. Abhishek is asking, how do you uphold pride when facing failure multiple times?
So I'd say that failure and pride may not be directly related, right? Like, I think pride is for you to keep trying and knowing that internally you've tried your best and you've done your best. Failure is the outcome has a certain measurement and you haven't met that measurement. Now, pride should be where when you face a failure, you objectively evaluate what is the bar and where you are. And pride should be pushing you to go up further and further and further so that eventually you meet the bar. A lack of pride will cause you to say, to hell with this, I can't do it, I don't want to do it. A complete presence of pride will make you go up that ladder no matter how difficult it is. So pride is about saying, that's okay. I know that I tried my best. Now I'm going to evaluate why I failed and see how I can put a plan together to keep addressing that gap little by little by little. Right? And that's how, if you look at the greatest athletes in the world, how they've succeeded. For me, tennis is probably my passion in that sense. When I look at Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, the way they have molded their career, building on top of failure, it's incredible, right? And the way they have come up. And that's because they have a lot of pride in what they do.
Deepak is asking, don't you think happiness is a stage which comes after getting sense of achievement? So only successful people who achieve only seems to be happy.
That's a very good question, and that's a very nuanced question, and I believe the answer is actually in defining success, right? If you define success as I need to be the richest person in the world, or even I need to be richer than that person who was my neighbor, or I need to be richer than my cousin because I don't get along with his mom, then you're going to be in a slippery slope, right? There will always be, imagine if Warren Buffett had said, for me, happiness is being the richest person in the world. Success is being the richest person in the world. And if I'm not successful, then I'm going to be unhappy. Well, Elon Musk is far above all of them right now. So that would make Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and anybody else really unhappy people, if that's their measure of success. So for us, I think each of us it's a very personal question, right? What is success to you? For some people, it is acquiring a title. For some people, it is doing their best every day to help a lot of people and getting that impact and feeling good about it. For some people, it is work-life balance and spending enough time with their families and not the money that is associated with it. They're happy with less money as long as they get more time. For some people, it's the other way around. I think it's a very personal situation as to what you peg success to. But you're absolutely right. Depending on what you have pegged your success to, yes, only successful people feel happy. But I think the corollary is also true, right? Happy people know how to set their own idea of success in a way that they can be satisfied. So it's like there's a connection there, and it's both are codependent.
Okay, let's take up the last question for the day. Rohit is asking, thank you very much for such an amazing session. I would like to know your thoughts on the title of this session, that is, The Glass is Always Full.
All right, excellent. I thought a lot of people might...
we have a lot of questions on this.
A lot of people might think I'm like an avid beer drinker, I'm a connoisseur or something. I am. I love beer, and I fancy that I have quite a good taste for it, and I really appreciate fine beer, especially German and Belgian ones. But while the idea may be that, I like beer, but that's not why the glass is always full. You've all heard the metaphor, the glass is always half empty or half full. That signifies optimism or pessimism. For me, it's not half full. I think the glass is always full. And the reason is there is so much for us to look at and say, life is good. And we often don't do that. I think that's why I say that for many of us, especially for those of us in the technology industry where we're living at a time when there is so much positive change happening, there are so many opportunities. Learning has become so easy with these online platforms. You can just get on to YouTube and learn so many things. Honestly, the glass is overflowing. It's not just full, it's overflowing. So maybe I should rename this topic as the glass is always overflowing. So there you have it, Sugandha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Guru. It was a very informative session and our learners enjoyed it. And thanks for taking out time on a weekend. And it was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks to all the learners for attending the session and for your questions. And we will see you all next week again and have a happy weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sugandha.